Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to each Central Missouri in the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 366. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Sunday, June the 23rd, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Topic of today's essay, old school versus new school, what is the best? What do you think I'm going to say? Okay, well, is an old man going to say that new school is best, or is the old man going to say that old school is best? I guess you'll have to listen to find out. But we're going to talk about training, sports training. And before you turn it off, okay, before you say, Strong, I don't want to listen to some stupid podcast on stupid sports training. I'm not an athlete. Sports training does not have to be for athletes. Sports training is for anybody who likes to do things like walk, stand up from a seated position, get onto the floor and get off of the floor. Okay. Do any of you listening to this podcast do this? Okay. I would suspect that all of you do this. Let me take it back. I would suspect that all of you would like to do this. But because we get older, sometimes we can't do that. And I'm going to talk a bit about my own experiences, things that I've done, doctors I've been to, injuries I've had that have limited my ability to do certain things, and ways that I've gotten around them. We're also going to talk about a major league pitcher. His name is Paul Skenes. And you may or may not have heard about him. He's a pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates. If you haven't heard about him, you will, because the guy is exceptional and he does things in an exceptional way. With old school training techniques, a training technique that was used by a guy who was pretty good in his day. His name was Nolan Ryan. In fact, how long ago was this? Well, Paul Skenes does this training technique the same one Nolan Ryan did. Nolan Ryan did it when Paul Skenes' parents were in grade school. Okay, that's how long ago that was. But the old things tend to just come back and do the right thing. So we're going to talk about this, old school versus new school. What's best when it comes to taking care of your body, okay? And I doubt that there's many major league pitchers or NFL quarterbacks or MISL or soccer players out there, basketball players, hockey players who play professionally or even semi-professionally, okay? But when we get older, we'd like to do things like walk a few miles or play with grandchildren or children even, okay? And that's when we get hurt, when we get older, that limits our ability to do all these things. So again, this essay is going to be about some of the problems I've had, some of the ways I've gotten around them, and the way that Paul Skenes, this pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates, gets around them as well. First, quick update on the Jaguar Mark 7. I haven't been giving many updates because there still aren't a ton of updates to give, but it's slow but sure progress. Most every week, I work on the car, sometimes with Dad, sometimes not. More progress was made this weekend installing the windows and the door mechanisms and the cranks and the locks and all this. But it takes so long to do all this kind of stuff because I'm not a professional. I'm learning this stuff and just slow but sure progress. But as these mechanisms go together, I take a look at the way these things are crafted, the way these things are done, and it's just amazing the way a handmade car was built. And this was a handmade car, okay? Sure, they stamped out some parts, and a lot of parts were factory made to a specification. But brackets would be put on, and for instance, when you have a bolt that goes through a hole that holds something in place. The way the new cars are, they're just snap plastic, okay? Before that, they were screw-in pot metal. Before this, what they did is they'd make the car part itself the same, okay? But the screw they would make, there are so many on these cars, they're floating screw threads. And the way they do this is they take a couple pieces of sheet metal, they weld them together. And in the middle of these two pieces of sheet metal where they've left a little bit of play, they put a square nut, okay? And this square nut in a square weldment can move about radially, maybe an eighth of an inch, a quarter of an inch. So if everything doesn't line up perfect, it doesn't matter. You just you just move the nut that goes into place. And then once you fasten the nut through, it goes through the other side. You put the bolt through and you tighten it down with a nut. So the care and precision that was done with these cars, just the work that was put into them is incredible. There's two little shrouds that go around the wings on the back windows of the car. Now, this car had wings on the front and wings on the back. Most of you younger people don't even know what I'm talking about with a wing. A wing on a car, the windows go up and down, okay? But in the corner, there was a little triangular piece of glass on this car, triangular in the front and a semicircle in the back. And what you would do is these windows didn't crank up and down, but they popped out just a little bit. So as you're going by, you could just crack these wings and get like a cross ventilation going, okay? It didn't beat you to death, like, the wind didn't beat you to death like a rolling down a window, but it was a little bit of a cross draft. Anyway, the back wings, they're a semicircle, and you pop them out from the back. There's a shroud, one for the left-hand side, one for the right-hand side. And they're different. I mean, they're about the same, but they're different. One of them has little cutouts. The other one had the cutouts, but somebody decided to take a piece of sheet metal and soft weld and sand another piece of sheet metal in there so that the little cutouts didn't show. Now, I don't know how long this took, but this was a handmade operation. And if you had one guy with his soldering equipment and little pieces set there, I would think that it would probably still take one man about, 10, 15 minutes to do one of these. And this is a shroud that covers a cam on the wing of an automobile. Throw an extra 15 minutes in. Friends, on a modern car, it doesn't take 15 minutes to assemble an engine, okay? The time that was put into these cars is just incredible. And I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes I'll just stand back and I'll see something and I'll go down a rabbit hole, whereas, okay, I got to stop putting this thing together and figure out how it was built. How was it built this way? Why was it built this way? Why did they do it like this? Different steels, or different metals, I should say, on the car. Some are brass and some are steel. It just depends on what they had. I think I mentioned before a couple of weeks ago, the windshield wiper. I couldn't figure out what the windshield wiper motor was. I couldn't find it anywhere. Well, this is a Mark 7. This is a windshield wiper motor off an old Mark 5. Now, mine was one of the first Mark 7s built. Translation, they had old Mark 5. Mark 5 came before Mark 7. They had old Mark 5 windshield wiper motors hanging around, so they just put that on this car, okay? The whole car is that way. So some progress is being made every week. When I walk away from that place, I smile and say, you know what? We got a little bit more done today. And actually, we had a pool party for my grandson at the house yesterday, which is why I didn't do a Saturday podcast. But my daughter-in-law asked me, when's this car going to be finished? And I smiled and said, never. She said, what do you mean never? I said, well, never. There'll always be something to do. And she looked at me like I had two heads. Anybody who has seen this car know exactly what I'm talking about when I say the car will never truly be finished, because there'll always be something else to do. Okay, I'm finished waxing eloquently on my 1951 Jaguar Mark 7. So let's talk about the essay of today. Old school versus new school. What is the best? In a little over, actually a little under, how many weeks? Well, we're talking in about 6 weeks, 7 weeks, I'll be 65 years old. And as we get older, in fact, we're all getting older, I guess. In fact, I was thinking about that the other day. Somebody said, we're not getting any younger. Well, nobody's getting any younger, friends. We're all getting older. If you're 13, you have things to look forward to. If you're 30 or older, Not so much, okay? If you're not careful, the wheels start to fall off. And there's a lot of things that you can do to delay the inevitable. Some of it is genes. Some of it is diet. Some of it is exercise. Some of it is limiting your bad habits like drinking and smoking and drug taking. I mean, if you limit all that kind of stuff, eliminate some of it, most of it, maybe all of it, except the drug take, the alcohol. Anyway, there's a lot of things you can do to delay the inevitable. But we're all going to end up in a pine box or a jar, a vase for ashes or something. Okay, maybe the bottom of a lake, whatever we decide to do. But none of us are getting out of this life alive. And as we get older, you scratch off the list of things that you used to be able to do. Well, I'm too old to do that. I can't do that anymore. Sure, mind over matter can help a lot. But no matter how hard I try, if I decided I'm going to be a starting shortstop for the St. Louis Cardinals, that's never going to happen. That ship has sailed, okay? I'm too old, plus I was never any good. Other than that, sure, you can be whatever you want to be, right? Yeah, keep thinking that. But as you get older, as we get older, there are certain things that we can do and certain things that we can't do, okay? And what I've always liked to do is take a look at what athletes do, okay? Now, there's certain things that athletes do because athletes make a living with their body, okay? If you're a pitcher and you can't throw, you're not making a living. Or if you're a batter and you can't hit, or any athlete and you can't run, okay, you're not going to make any money. You're not going to be on the team anymore. You're going to have to do something else for a living, okay? But I've always looked to the way athletes do things, okay? Because if they do this and that allows them to do that, I like to copy some of that, okay? And I'm going to talk about a guy, his name is Paul Skenes. Let's talk about him first. Then we'll segue into how this applies to everyday, common day, me and you, dear listener, okay? Who is Paul Skenes? Well, he's a rookie. He's a rookie pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's become baseball's must-see attraction on the mound. In fact, the Pirates are horrible, but he is not. He throws 100 miles an hour, and he also has a pitch called a splinker, okay? It's just a different pitch, okay? So the guy throws 100 miles an hour, and if you don't look out, you'll get a splinker, and you're not going to be able to hit that either, okay? He's got 7 starts, okay? And he struck out 53 batters in under 40 innings, an ERA of under 2.3. He's just a fantastic pitcher, and he's 22 years old. He is from LSU, so he's a college graduate. I shouldn't say that. I don't know that. I know he went to LSU. I don't know that he's graduated, but he developed his routine, a pitching routine that he has. He developed that with his coach at LSU, and the Pirates, they're kind of going along with his warm-up routine. Now, you look at all the things that pitchers do. Lift weights. They stretch out. They have a certain way that they pitch. They only do so much. Even when they pitch, they only throw many pitches so they don't get tired for the next start. What does Paul Skenes do? Just to warm up, just to practice. He throws a football around the field. And you think to yourself, why are you doing that? Well, the Pittsburgh Pirate coach, Oscar Martin, says Paul is very routine-oriented. In fact, the routine he has right now, it's the same one that he used before he came to the Pirates. Now, that pro-style program is something Skenes developed when he was in college at LSU, throwing a football, okay? And you think to yourself, why would you throw a football when you throw a baseball? It's a similar motion. In fact, when Skenes throws around a football, he's leaning into a decades-old technique that was once championed by all-time pitching great Nolan Ryan back in the 1980s. There's even a classic baseball card that shows Ryan throwing a football back in 1989. That's when Skenes' parents were still in high school. Now, Tom House, he's a former big league pitcher and pitching coach, and he was a pitching coach. He's now a quarterback guru for Tom Brady and other NFL quarterbacks. And Tom House is known for popularizing football tossing methods for major league pitchers. In fact, he says while throwing a football with a spiral and firing a heater into a catcher's mitt might not look might look very different, but actually they're using the same fundamentals. In fact, House says for a pitcher who throws a football and a baseball, the arm action is the same, okay? Now, House was Nolan Ryan's pitching coach when Ryan was with the Rangers, and football is one of the best training tools there is for baseball. House also notes that a football is about 3 times as heavy as a baseball, which helps build arm strength and quickness. The idea of Skenes getting any stronger is a scary one because he already throws harder than any other starter in baseball. But if you think about this, remember when you were a kid and you played baseball? What did you do before you went up to bat? You put a donut on the bat, okay? And you swung that because you were swinging a bat that's heavier than what you're going to use when you get up to the plate. Maybe you used a donut. Maybe you swung 2 or 3 bats. You did something to make the swing heavier. Now, you weren't going to hit with that, but it made swinging the lighter bat easier. Same thing with throwing a football. If you throw around a football, which weighs a whole lot more than a baseball, then you get a baseball in your hand, feels light as a feather. You can throw it hard, okay? Now, House adds that football's weight also leads to the arm moving less quickly during the throwing motion, which reduces stress on the shoulder and elbow, which is where pitchers have big problems. You blow out your elbow, you have Tommy John, you're out for a year and a half. Throw out your shoulder, you probably never come back because there's no good surgery for a bad shoulder. So in an era when pitchers' arms seem like ticking time bombs, this is a way to prepare while lessening the risk of injury. Now, Skenes' pitching coach at LSU, and he's now the head coach at Georgia, says the Pirate ace began throwing a football the day after he made his starts for LSU. Using the football allowed Skenes to keep his arm moving without taxing it in the same way that throwing his pitches would tax it, okay? So you kept it moving, but you didn't tax it in the same way. Now, learning to develop a 5-day routine is one of the earliest challenges most starting pitchers face when they begin their major league career. It isn't always easy for a young pitcher to understand his body well enough to know how to care for it when the pressure's on. But with Skenes, those routines include weighted balls for strength and other things that are very similar. Now, the thing about Skenes is, think about this. You're just using weighted balls and doing things just a little bit different. In fact, you may or may not have heard about, how pitchers, you heard Fiona in this show, but pitchers, major league pitchers, if they throw 80 pitches in a game, that's a lot. Very few even throw 100 pitches in a game. They just don't do it anymore. In college, a college pitcher will throw 100, 130, 150 pitches in a game. And you think to yourself, well, why does a college pitcher throw so much more than a major league pitcher? Because a major league pitcher throws every 5th day, sometimes 6th if there's a off day in there someplace, because most pitching staffs have 5-man rotations. Now, back in the day, they had 4-man rotations, and that didn't seem to affect the pitchers, but that's another podcast for another day. In college, a pitcher may throw 150 pitches, but then he may not throw again for 10 or 11 days. And on the major league level, you've got to throw every 5th day, every 6th day maybe, and you're going to start between 30 and 35 games. Okay, that's just the way it is. So they do things differently. Now, throwing that football illustrates how the Pirates are staking a large portion of their success in the future on Paul Skenes. Now, before promoting him to the majors in May of this year, less than a year after they drafted him first overall, they had already analyzed how he trains and recovers so there would be a seamless transaction. In other words, they looked at how the guy practiced. They didn't bring him in and try to change everything. They brought him in and tried to keep things the same. Now, warming up with a football isn't something most people see, says Oscar Marin. That's the Pirates pitching coach. But it happens on baseball fields all the time. At least it does with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, why do I bring up a major league pitcher like Paul Skenes when we're talking about you and I doing things so we can do a sport, like walking, like standing up, like getting off the ground, okay? Because we all see doctors. We all have problems. As we get older, we have problems with our joints, with our legs, with our, you name it, we have problems, okay? I can say that I've never had a joint cut on, but I see a certain kind of a doctor. I've seen him 3 times now. I should say I've seen him more than 3 times. I've seen my doctor for 3 different occasions for 3 separate problems, each of which were solved. And the doctor I see is a sports medicine doctor. You may think, well, Strong, why are you seeing a sports medicine doctor? You don't play sports anymore. Once upon a time, the last time I played sports, I played organized softball. Haven't done that since I was 23. So what is that, 42 years ago? It's been 42 years since I've played organized sports. Why do you see a sports medicine doctor? Well, it's because sports medicine is just getting you up and moving. Years ago, probably 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I was having bad problems with my knees. And all my friends have had knee surgery or knee replacement, or sometimes both. And I had never had any of them. My knees had gotten so bad, if I was going to go on a hike, I had to wear braces on both knees, or I couldn't make it. It just hurt to walk any more than maybe a half a mile. And I thought, okay, you're probably going to have problems. So I went and saw a group of orthopedic guys, and they said, okay, we're surgeons and we'll talk to you, but before you do, see our sports medicine guy. I said, but I don't play sports. He says, no, this guy's different. This guy works with you and he finds out what you're trying to do and why you can't do it. And he has alternatives that athletes use. Sure, I'll see the sports medicine guy. So I had my x-rays done, and then he sat me down. He said, good news. He said, there's nothing wrong with your knees. I said, excuse me? I said, I can't hardly walk. Half a mile's it. I'm done. I can't walk without braces. He said, let me show you the x-rays. And he showed me my knees. And they weren't in the sockets. They were off to the side. He says, there's your knee pain right there. I said, well, yep, that's what I'm trying to say. See, they're not right. You need to fix them. And he said, the reason they're not right is because the muscles on the side, I forget the name of them, you don't exercise them properly. And they won't hold your knee in place. So here, do these exercises that'll put your knee back into position and you'll be fine. So I rolled my eyes and said, okay, whatever you say, doc. But I listened to him. And I did the exercises religiously. Friends, I've had no knee pain for 20 years. 0. Now, when I climb a mountain, when I'm done, my knees are barking. But that's because I've climbed a mountain, maybe anywhere from 2 to 5,000 elevation gain, feet of elevation gain. I've walked anywhere from 8 to 17 miles, Sure, my knees are going to be tired. I got to rest them up. I got to put them up. I take an aspirin. And by the next day, I'm fine. So this sports medicine guy made a believer out of me. Go back about 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, I had problems with plantar fasciitis in my foot. And he said, yep, you got plantar fasciitis. It's a big deal. He showed me the x-rays. He showed me where the bone spur was. He said, we have to, and I had them in my shoulders too. So I had trouble lifting my shoulders and some problems with my feet, mainly my shoulders. He gave me exercises for my shoulder. And what he did, he says, look, this takes your, he had a name for it. It's the group of muscles around your shoulder. He said that lifts them up out of place so you don't hang on that bone spur. Do these exercises and you'll be fine. Friends, I do those exercises and I don't have problems with my shoulder. None worth worrying about anyway. I'll just say that. The plantar fasciitis was a whole lot easier. I just did a few exercises for that too, and that problem went away. Fast forward to about 1.5 years ago, I started having big time problems with my feet, plantar fasciitis. So I started doing some of the exercises. It helped some, but not a lot. I was doing wind sprints. I was doing 18-inch box jumps, and I was just hurting bad. So finally, after about 1 year of really not being able to walk with pain, I'm going to go see the sports medicine guy once again. So I did. He said, yep, you got plantar fasciitis. It's a whole lot worse this time. Do these exercises and go to this guy for physical therapy and you'll be fine. So I did. And on my right leg, I was fine. My left leg got a little better, but not really. I still could not walk with pain after 4 weeks of exercises and physical therapy. So I said, now what do? I came back and said, look, this hasn't fixed things. So let me see what's going on. Well, he touched on my inseam, not inseam, what would you call it? Instep, thank you. Felt on my instep, no pain where there was pain with plantar fasciitis. And then he hit my heel with his finger, and I about went through the roof. He said, ooh, this isn't good. This is not plantar fasciitis. This is something else. So he sent me to have an MRI. Had the MRI, and I had a tear. One of the tendons had torn, and it had been torn for a long time. He said, what have you been doing to tear a tendon? I said, I don't know. He said, what have you been doing differently? I said, well, wind sprints and box jumps. And he smiled. He said, yeah, that's what did it. I said, well, I enjoy doing that stuff. He says, yeah, you do. Young people trying to do, or old people trying to do young things, that's what keeps me in business. He said, you did this, you didn't stretch, you tore a tendon. We have to stabilize it for 4 weeks. Stabilize it, take off the cast, take off the cast. Then you'll be fine after about 1 week of physical therapy. Okay. Wore the cast for 4 weeks. What a nightmare. Took it off, did the exercises. After a week, it still hurt. And I'm thinking to myself, here we go again. But on the 10th, maybe the 11th day, all of a sudden, the pain started going away. It got better every day. And after about 3 weeks, the pain was almost gone. And friends, I'm probably about 90% now to where I was before. Now, fact of the matter is, he said, look, you tore a tendon. And once you tear a tendon, you're never going to be the same because it's torn. Yeah, it's fixed. You can use it now, but it's different, and it does feel different. So I asked him, I said, okay, fine. It's working fine now. So can I do box jumps and wind sprints? And he smiled, said, sure, you can do those if you want to come back and see me and do this all over again. Okay, so I can't do the box jumps. I can't do the wind sprints, but I can do my walk. And I'm scheduled in, what is this? This is end of June, early September. Number 3 son and I are going to take a trip out west. We're going to spend a few days acclimating, and then we're going to climb the second largest mountain in the state of California, White Mountain Peak. I've tried it twice before, failed the first time, succeeded the second time. So this will be my third time attempting to climb this peak. I'm 1-1 with success rate, and I suspect I'll be okay now. I have to build up my strength again in my foot, and I'm doing that every day, walking, doing my exercises and that. But this will be an acclimation exercise more than anything else because the trailhead is at over 12,000 feet, 2,000 feet above the tree line, okay? So that's where it starts. So we will fly out to Las Vegas and drive to Bishop, California, spend the night in Bishop in a hotel the first night at 5,000 feet. Get up the next morning, buy our supplies, drive up to Grandview Campground and spend the night at 8,000 feet. Get up the next morning and we'll spend the day in the ancient bristlecone pine forest, which is right around 10,000 feet. Go back to Grandview, spend the night at 8,000 feet. Then get up the next morning, climb White Mountain Peak, come home, spend the night in Bishop. So we'll have 3 nights of acclimating. So we'll be spending nights at 5,000, 8,000, a day at 10,000, another night at 8,000, and then we'll be ready for the 12,000 to 14,000 plus climb to White Mountain Peak. Now, the long way around this, okay, dear listeners, I don't want you to think, okay, now I'm going to look down on you if you're 65 or so and you can't climb a mountain. I'm not saying that at all. But I will tell you that if this were a year ago, if this were 6 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, if this were 1 month ago, and you asked me, can you climb White Mountain Peak? I'd say, nope, can't do it. In fact, today, I could probably make it today, but I have more training to do. That's a 15 plus mile hike with over 2,000 foot elevation gain. So I still have some training. I still have some preparation to do, but I'm going to be just fine on this trip. The reason I'm even mentioning this, okay, old school versus new school. I'm big on old school type of training methods, okay? If you want to do yoga, if you want to do CrossFit, if you want to do cold plunges, all this new wave, new age stuff, and if that works for you, fine. I prefer old school to new school. What does Paul Skeens do to help his arm? He throws stuff. What am I doing to improve my hiking? I'm going to walk a whole lot after seeing a doctor that gives me exercises so I can take a walk. I can also say by doing these exercises, it strengthens my knees, it strengthens my feet. And if I'm in a chair and I need to get up, I can get up without pain. If I'm sitting on the ground playing with the grandkids and I need to get up, I can get up. I'm not going to say without pain, but I can get up without help. And I think to yourself, if you're 35 years old thinking, I'll never be in that boat. When I'm 110, I'll be able to get up off of the ground. Maybe not. Okay. You get older and that stuff just gets harder. But if you do the exercises, if you do the work, if you put in the work, you can do more than you can now. Let's just say that. And my advice to you, dear listeners, is if you want to do more physically, because face it, when we get older, it's harder to do more physically. It's just tougher because we're older and our joints are creaky and you're working 30, 40, 50, 60 hours a week and you get tired and you don't have time to go to the gym and your muscles atrophy as you get older and you become more sedentary. Okay. See a good sports medicine doctor. Go see one. Say, look, I want to be able to do this and I can't. Put me on an exercise program to allow me to do this. And if you've got a good sports medicine doctor, he'll do that because it doesn't matter. Sure, sports medicine doctor. In fact, my sports medicine doctor also treats some of the St. Louis Cardinal players. But I'm guaranteeing he's not giving them the same exercises as me because I'm not trying to throw a ball 100 miles an hour. I'm not trying to hit a ball 400 feet over a fence. I'm not trying to steal a base or dive after a hit ball. I just want to be able to hike and climb mountains. I want to be able to scamper along a ridge and get to a fishing spot that's difficult to get to so I can catch lots of fish. I want to be able to get on a bicycle and ride for 10, 15, 20, 30 miles without dying at the end of the trip. I want to do that type of thing, okay? That's what I want to do. And this sports medicine guy, friends, he's 3 for 3 helping me out when I've had a problem. So what you may want to consider is there are certain physical things that you can't do, consider seeing a sports medicine doctor. And then once they give you the recommendation, do everybody a favor. Listen to them. I've listened to mine 100% of the time, and I've gotten results 100% of the time. Okay. Old school versus new school. Sure, new school training methods are fine, I guess. But the old school methods work fine for me. You want to ride a bicycle longer? Practice on a bike. You want to hike more? Practice walking. And so on and so forth. You want to practice getting up and down out of a chair? Do squat thrusts. That replicates getting in and out of a chair. That's another exercise I like to do. But the old school exercises seem to work the best. In fact, years ago when I used to play ball, when I was a kid, I never lifted weights. I never did all that kind of stuff, wind sprints. You know what we did to get better at playing ball? Played a whole lot of ball. Practice makes perfect. If you play catch for hours a day, just catching a ball, throwing a ball is going to be second nature. So if you just practice getting in and out of a chair, if you practice walking around the neighborhood, walking is going to become second nature. I speak from experience, friends. Dear listeners, as you get older, the list of things you can do slides off of the radar. I can tell you, if you get yourself a good sports medicine doctor, follow his instructions or her instructions and do what they say, I found that they pay big dividends indeed. Well, that's it. I'm done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's my email address. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. Send me an email. I love to get your email comments. I get them via Facebook, via instant messages. A couple of folks who have my phone number have even texted me. And email too, JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's probably where I get most of them, though, from the email. Whatever works for you, it works for me. That's it. I'm done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.